Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jonathan Ahl. June 4th marked the first day the state posted application forms for patients who want medical marijuana ID cards, which is unprecedented in the state's history. The application forms are also for would-be marijuana businesses, dispensaries, growers, and others. Patients may file applications beginning July 4th, businesses August 3rd. Joining me to talk about what the legalization of medical marijuana means for Missouri and the process of how physicians prescribe them as dispensaries start opening up in communities across the state are Dr. Mimi Vo and Rolla Councilman Daniel Jones. Councilman Jones uses marijuana to treat PTSD and other disorders and supports decriminalization of the drug. He joins us by phone. In studio is Dr. Vo. She is a local physician who is also part of the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association. Councilman Joe, Dr. Vo, thank you both for being on the program today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously this is something that was passed by the people in a referendum, but now that we're getting to it actually coming to fruition, what does legalization of medical marijuana mean for Missouri? Dr. Vo, we'll start with you.
So what this means is that the first time in history in Missouri, I, as a physician with a medical license here, have that option to try medical marijuana for my patients for multiple different diseases, including chronic pain, epilepsy, Crohn's disease, and other qualifying conditions. It does not mean that it may be the perfect fit for that patient, but for example, chronic pain, I may be able to use just a handful of medicines, and many times they're not helpful or they're not effective. And so this is one other modality that we as a physician would be able to possibly certify that the patient has the condition, and they may have that avenue to try.
Daniel, what is your take on it?
I would go on to say that I think it's really important that folks that have been using this plant and this non-toxic, safer alternative to so many other things out there, we finally have an avenue to do that legally as opposed to illicitly. So to me, today we've taken great steps in erasing a black market that's really put a shade on that industry.
Well, there's two things about this that I'd like both of you to comment on. First of all is that usually when a new drug becomes available for physicians, there's an FDA trial, then everybody kind of gets the access to it at the same time. Mm-hmm. But since states have been adding medical marijuana at different times, Dr. Vo, do you feel like you have more information, better understanding of best practices and what works and what doesn't, because the other states have done this previously, unlike a new drug that comes on the market when everybody kind of gets it at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. There is quite a bit of research available that shows that marijuana is effective as a medicine for many different conditions. However, because it has been made illegal for so many years and the negative stigma of it, we don't have the quality research that we would like. So there is not the avenue to be able to go down the road where we can have specific dosing or go through the FDA and whatnot, because it has been Schedule 1 by the DEA, so it's federally illegal. There's not a lot of federal research dollars that have been available for physicians and scientists to research it. But now that we are the 33rd state to have medical marijuana available, we have the ability to look at these other states and what it's been used for, and that is very, very helpful.
As a physician, I don't think there's ever been another case where someone's been using something to self-medicate that was illegal and now becomes legal. Does that change the algebra on how you look at patient care? Because you can have somebody come to you and say, I've been using this for years and it's been working great. That usually isn't something with a new depression medication or a new diabetes medication.
Absolutely. And I think that now that the landscape has changed, where this negative stigma is going away, patients are willing to come to me or go to their physicians and say, I have been using this for years for sleep or for anxiety or for my irritable bowel syndrome. And so we're learning as a medical community as well about these different ways that patients have been using it. But that's right, there's never been anything like this before, where patients are using this for chronically for a long time, and yet the medical community is really behind.
I'd like to make sure that our listeners, though, they can join us on the conversation. If you have a question or comment about this topic, you can call us at 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can tweet us at STL On Air or email us at talk@stlpublicradio.org. Daniel, can you give you a little bit of your history with marijuana and how you became active in advocating for it, both medically and you also would like to see its freedoms go further?
You betcha. So I was an 8-year Navy veteran. I was combat photojournalist turned photojournalist in the Navy, and I walked away with that with a few different ideas of what medicine looked like. I've spent some time in some other countries and seen things in other places, and what I came back with was a few different ailments from 8 years in service, which I think anybody that's in for that long is going to have, an issue or two. And I found that only cannabis and counseling really helped with me, and one of those was illegal. So when I came back to Missouri to reside, I decided to deal in cannabis and to share cannabis and to help some folks out. That ended up giving me quite a bit of felony charges, a $300,000 bond and 256 days in the county jail here in Phelps County. And I decided that wasn't a good path for anybody to go down. So I got a little upset and decided to advocate and be a bigger advocate and activist for my plant. And that's what I've been doing ever since. Education and tearing down those stigmas, like Dr. Vo was discussing. That I felt like that's been my job since they told me that I shouldn't have that plant and threw me in jail for it.
Well, let's talk about the different forms that medical marijuana can take, because I think that most people generally, when they think about marijuana, they think about what you smoke. Mm-hmm. But Dr. Vo, from a medical practitioner point of view, does the delivery method, what delivery methods are available to you, and how do those affect treatment options?
Right. In other states, there are very many different methods of administration. It's not just the smokable form. There's the vaporization form. There's also tinctures, capsules, powder that can be added to drinks, creams, patches, so very many different ways to administer this medicine. The smokable or inhalable forms allow for a quicker delivery, so the patients who are having, for example, a panic attack can get relief, or with pain can get relief quickly. However, it doesn't last a very long time, so then patients need to redose frequently. So, for example, if I were to have a patient in the future who has troubles with anxiety and panic and they cannot sleep, or they're chronic pain and they cannot sleep, I would likely say, you can try a vaporization method for a quick delivery, but then I would suggest an ingestible or a sublingual form, so that we have a longer duration, so the patient doesn't wake up in the middle of the night and have pain again, or be awakened from it, so that we have a quick delivery and also a longer delivery method. But there are multiple ways to deliver this medication.
Are there any other medications that are analogous to that there are different delivery methods depending on, because I don't know that I've ever gotten a prescription for anything other than a pill, or I guess when I was really little, liquid form. But is there any other medication that has that wide array of delivery methods?
I would guess maybe albuterol, which is used for asthma. There's a short-acting albuterol, a meter dose inhaler, which will last 4 to 6 hours. There's the longer preparation that will last 12 hours. There is oral form of albuterol. It's not used very often, but yes, I think that would be one that I would say is analogous.
Let's take a phone call. Chris from the Shaw neighborhood is on the line. Chris, you have a question.
Well, just that the doctor earlier said that this by legalizing medical marijuana, it's going to do away with an illicit marketplace, and was just reading recently that the case in California is just the opposite. There's still an enormous black market of people who don't want to pay the taxes on it, and it's enraging those that are going the legal route because they're paying taxes, and there still is a large segment of the population that is selling it illegally.
Isn't there a difference, though, between recreational use and medicinal use? Is there a black market for medicinal use? Or is it a black market for recreational use? Because I think that's one of the things that, and Chris, I think it's a very valid question, and thank you very much for your call. But I'd like both of you to talk about this, because in Missouri, what's legal is medicinal use, but it seems like the discussion immediately goes to recreational use. In Illinois, our neighbors just passed recreational use. There's other states where recreational use is. So how do you do what you do? And Dr. Vogt, we'll start with you. How do you do what you do professionally with that specter hanging over it?
Sure. There is a list of qualifying conditions, and patients can go to the Department of Health's website to see if they would qualify. For me, what's most exciting is that I have patients who are using it from the illicit market. But in the future, we will have the ability to understand what doses they are using in what form, and I think more importantly to have the lab testing so that if my patient has a side effect or they have maybe a rash, that I can know that the product that they're using does not have fungus or bacteria, and or use of pesticides that should not be used. So I think that for a medicine, that is a different conversation than the adult use conversation.
Councilman Jones, you've been pretty vocal that you'd like to see recreational use happen or decriminalization. You've kind of gone beyond it. Is it difficult for you to have a line where you're talking about different things when you're talking about medicinal versus non-medicinal use?
Well, part of the problem that we have there, like in places like California, is that it has been illicit for so long that it's really hard to break up a black or gray market that's existed there for as long as it has out there. The fact is that it exists everywhere. Being able to destigmatize it, being able to regulate, being able to educate, those are the things that are going to help do away with that black market and those gray markets. Are people going to sell a little bit of cannabis on the side? Yeah, well, sure. Everywhere you go, you're going to see that kind of a market. People share that plant. That's what's always happened. But we do need to take the money out of the black market. Part of that is that the federal government needs to immediately realize that they are standing in the state's ways every time that we do these conversations. Have these conversations. That's what ends up in the way of it, is the federal government not moving as quickly as our states and our people's rights are.
We need
it's
to
hard to imagine a situation where one person is busted because they have a plant and a little bit of cannabis in their pocket, but then the other one is hailed as brave for going in and get their medical card. It just doesn't make sense to keep putting people in jail for this.
We do need to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
Welcome back to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Now back to our conversation with Dr. Mimi Vogt and Rolla City Councilman Daniel Jones on medical marijuana. While it did pass as a statewide referendum, and even a lot of the discussion, people talking about this, it seems that generally people are accepting of medical marijuana as a reality. There are certainly some people who have some concerns with it. We want to play a little piece of tape of Brandon Casterison of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse in the St. Louis area when he was talking against Amendment 2.
People who do hair braiding for a living are required to go through more training than the dispensary staff. Now, Amendment 3 has to have a pharmacist on call 24 hours a day, but that's not training for staff. Servers and wait staff have to have more training to hand you your food than the bud tenders at dispensaries that are giving you medical advice. That's a big problem.
I'd like both of you to react to that. Daniel, can you start?
Yeah, I heard all kinds of things wrong with that. First off, Amendment 2 introduced medical cannabis into Missouri as one of our most regulated industries we've ever seen. And as for everything else he said, I think that there was a lot of debate and a lot of arguing happening back then. But the reality is that alcohol and pills and things like this, I get really upset when people compare them, but at the same time, they want to regulate them as soon as we have them available. So I just think that there was a lot more that could have been said at that time.
Dr. Vo.
So I will say, being on the trade association, I've gotten a chance to look at the questions that these businesses have to answer in order to win one of these licenses for whether it be cultivation, manufacturing, or dispensary. They first of all, there needs to be some experience, and there also needs to be some experience in healthcare, in the healthcare pharmacy industry. The people who are a part of this industry who are applying for these licenses are people that have lots of experience in other businesses, and it's going to be a very tough process for them to go through. And when I get questions all the time from these business owners who are looking to apply, where can they go to find the best training for their staff? So you better believe that they are looking at training their staff to understand cannabis, very much so, and also they will likely have a medical advisor on their team or a pharmacy advisor on their team, if not be a doctor or a pharmacist. And I get these questions from patients as I go out to speak to the multiple sclerosis groups or the cancer survivor groups. How will they know which dispensary is good, which dispensary to go to? And I implore them to just call and find out what the training for their staff is. There are already some dispensary staff training companies that have held seminars here in our state. So those are already happening. So those dispensary agents will be educated.
Well, and there are other states that have already done that, and that gets us to John on Twitter, who asked, how does Missouri's rollout of medical marijuana compare to other states? There have been delays in Arkansas and Ohio, lack of access. How are things shaping up or expected to shape up in Missouri?
I don't think we could have expected any better than what is going on right now. The Amendment 2, as it was written and became a part of our Constitution, I have met multiple times with Dr. Williams and Director Fraker, who is the director of the medical marijuana program, and they are following the rule to the T. They're really moving right along, and there are other states that we didn't see this happen. So I think that we are fortunate as a state to have them in place to make sure that this is rolled out the way it was meant to be by Amendment 2. And I will say that on speaking with them, both of them have said that their North Star is the patients and patient access. So they very much care about patients being able to get access of this medicine and awarding those licenses to those who will have the best business experience and best business model.
Well, and the other thing that is happening is that cities are creating the rules on where dispensaries, labs, research facilities can locate. And Councilman Jones, this would be good for you to speak to, because the city of Rolla went through the debate of, I think the primary one was the number of feet setbacks that this had to have from schools, daycares, places of worship. Amendment 2 said 1,000 feet, but cities could reduce it. Rolla chose 500 feet after doing less of a setback was rejected. And some communities are doing the full 1,000 feet, some are doing 0. Councilman Jones, how do you think that is playing out as communities get prepared to have these businesses locate in their various cities?
Well, I think first off, we've seen across Missouri that a lot of citizens have spoke up. Here in Rolla specifically, our citizens spoke up. I was myself backing a 0 to 300 foot buffer, but I heard from so many folks here that they were more comfortable with the 500 feet. So that's what our council ended up going with. I do think it was very neat to see my community stand up and have a lot to say from both sides of it. It's been a long time since we've seen that type of show out at City Hall over one thing. It's amazing that we're providing this alternative to our citizens in Rolla, but it's also only the first step. We have to cease being unfair to a lot of our other citizens. I think that's the next step is to pay attention to medical as it lands and see what it does for especially our smaller communities like Rolla. But then I also think it's time to stop putting people in jail over it.
I'm wondering, Daniel, the one of the arguments that some people made against medical marijuana is the slippery slope argument, or what some people would call the slippery slope fallacy, that if you do this, then it is just a matter of time until recreational adult use is available. I'm wondering your perspective on it, Daniel. Does that feed into that narrative that people had, because even before medical marijuana is legal in this state, some advocates, including you, are already saying, well, this is the first step.
There was no point in my relationship with cannabis where I I wasn't able to separate the two. I've been an advocate for medicinal marijuana for a long time, and working with patients and working with folks in the area, I've learned a lot about that. But what I can tell you is that I've advocated for recreational cannabis for a whole lot longer than that, since I first met the plant. And what I can tell you is that path will continue to go forward for me, even after medicinal lands and provides the comfort that it has. My fight is not even begun to be over.
Dr. Vo, I'm wondering if you can. You hear Daniel use words like "my relationship with," with this medicine. Is that unique? Do people talk about their relationship with their cholesterol medication or a relationship with their liver medication?
No,
well,
no.
I can tell you right away that if someone's put in jail, I apologize. I thought it was me. I would tell you right away that nobody's getting put in jail for 256 days for cholesterol medication. A relationship with it.
No, but I think that one thing that's unique about cannabis is it gives people peace and joy in their lives. I have patients who suffer from depression or PTSD, and they find cannabis is helpful for them to feel whole again. And so I hear that very often, where people will use it even as a wellness medicine, because it's treating their sleeping better. Now their pain is better, and they feel more awake and alive. And I hear that very often, especially in patients who are addicted to opiates and heroin. I see that very often, that they're able to use cannabis to get off their opiates, and they have a joy of life. And so I can see why someone would feel that close to their medicine if it's providing that for them.
Let's go to Paul in St. Louis, who's calling in, who has a question for us. Paul, you're on St. Louis on the air. Paul, did we lose Paul? All right, let's go to Mark. Mark in the Shaw neighborhood. Mark, you had a question.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm a medical student here in town, and I was recently out of town at somewhere where marijuana is recreationally legal. And I was very alarmed by some of the marketing tactics that these recreational companies are using, making alarming and frankly outright ridiculous claims about the benefits of marijuana, that it's antimicrobial, that it's anti-neoplastic. And while I do think there are legitimate therapeutic uses for marijuana, I also am alarmed by some of the dialogue. I think we need to really welcome criticism and look critically at it, because if we don't do that, we're going to treat it as a harmless panacea, and it's not that.
Mark, may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you find that the marketing that you're seeing on medical or on marijuana making those claims is substantially different than, say, the claims that some FDA non-approved things like herbals and oils and things like that? Because I understand what you're saying, but I think that we have a lot of that going on already with other natural substances that are completely legal, where there are claims made that may not stand up to peer-reviewed scrutiny. Do you think it's significant?
Right.
Do you think it's significantly different the way that they're marketing marijuana in that way compared to the way that St. John's Wort is marketed?
No, that's an excellent question, and it's a difficult answer. I think it's very, very similar, but it's important to note that, maybe not in the case of St. John's Wort with patients taking some specific drugs, but a lot of these herbal remedies are largely harmless. So even if they're being marketed dishonestly, I don't think that they're really harming our patients too much. And it's sort of like, well, if that works for you and that gives you peace of mind, go ahead. I don't think that marijuana is harmless, particularly in the adolescent population. So I think it's a little bit of a different conversation with regards to marijuana, but I think it's a totally fair point.
Dr. Vo, you wanted to respond. And Mark, thank you very much for your call. We do really appreciate it. Dr. Vo.
Mark, so I see what you're saying, and I know that in the CBD market there are companies who have made claims.
CBD, just so that everybody knows what we're talking about, is
cannabidiol, and it's in from the cannabis plant with low amounts of THC, less than 0.3%.
Yes.
So that's what we're seeing out in the marketplace. They are making certain claims, and those companies have gotten letters from the government saying, please do not make these claims. And so I see that point, but there is research showing that there are anti-neoplastic or tumor shrinkage from using cannabis. And we don't have enough research and data to show it all, but we do have it in mice data. We do have it data from animals showing that we do see some antimicrobial effects. And as far as it's being harmful, there are very many herbal medications that are much more harmful than cannabis is, and a lot of research that's done in certain herbal medications that show that they're not effective or not helpful. So I see what you're saying, and I think that companies probably should not make claims without having data to back it up, but there is some data out there. And I know as a medical student, Mark, that they're not, medical schools are traditionally not teaching cannabis. I believe it was the last data I saw was 85% of medical schools do not teach the endocannabinoid system, which is in all of our bodies, as well as cannabis. I was fortunate 2 weeks ago to go to the University of Missouri, Kansas City with Dr. Trish Herford, and she and I were able to speak for the first time in Missouri history to medical students, residents, faculty at UMKC Medical School. So we were very glad to be able to have an hour where we can educate the medical community and especially medical students who are going to be the next generation of physicians about cannabis and what its side effects are, what it's good for, and what the research is out there.
So a couple of people written, I would like to try to get these in before the end of our segment here. Jen in South St. Louis says, wants to make sure that part of the discussion is around how the war on drugs has been detrimental to people of color and how medical marijuana is involved in the destigmatization and de-incarceration of black and brown people. Daniel, maybe you can start with that?
You betcha. I think what's really wonderful to note is that this is becoming a conversation that is linked arms with medicinal and recreational conversations across the state. The fact of the matter is that there's a ton of statistics out there and a ton of research that says that folks of color have been targeted and have been treated unfairly, and that's part of the issue that we're dealing with. And there's even plenty of efforts within the medical marijuana and recreational marijuana industries to try and include those people more. And folks who have felony past, like myself, there's a lot of us out here that have suffered through this drug war and are veterans of this drug war. And I think those are the folks that we need to lift up high and say, guys, we're really sorry that you went through that, and this is for you also. And I think that we need to be more inclusive about that and understand that the reality is that those folks have been disproportionately targeted in the drug war.
Matt, one of our listeners, has a question that I think we really need to get in. I have a condition that qualifies me for medical marijuana under the law, though I don't even know where to begin the process of getting a medical card. Do I consult my primary care doctor? Do I call around looking for a doctor that specializes in medical cannabis prescriptions? Dr. Vo, what can you tell us about that?
Sure. I believe the first place to go would be to go to your primary care physician. One of my goals and one of my roles in the Missouri Cannabis Trade Association is as the healthcare and education chair to educate the physicians of Missouri about cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. And one of the steps is to educate the physicians on what it means to certify, because we are just certifying. We are not prescribing cannabis. We certify that the patient has the medical condition that they do have by looking at their medical records, talking to them, and examining them. And so first step, go to your primary care physician. You can go to the Department of Health's website, medicalmarijuana.mo.gov, and you can go onto the patient section to look and understand what the qualifying conditions are. And then there's a physician section. You can even print out the form and bring it to your doctor. It is no different than what I do currently to certify that the patient has a disability that they would need a disability parking sticker for. It's a very similar type of form. So you can print that out and take it to your primary care physician and see if they would be willing to certify you if they've seen you for a long period of time. If they're not able to, then the next step would to be find a physician that would be able to certify you. And there are websites out there currently. There's apps where you can find, so Google and look for that, and you might be able to find an app that you can download and find different physicians in Missouri that are certifying
but
patients.
Your advice would be that you shouldn't have a marijuana doctor and a regular doctor. You should have a doctor that is part of your primary care and everything that's involved with your health including this if it's something that might
Absolutely.
work.
That's the best case scenario. And if physicians are wanting to understand and learn more, we do have a 1-hour PowerPoint presentation at the Missouri Cannabis Trade Association's website, mocantrade.org. You can go under news and events, and there was a presentation we gave at Venture Cafe a few months ago, and you can download the presentation. We hope to do this throughout the state because we have recently gotten 1-hour continuing education credit for it. So we hope to go throughout the state to educate physicians further and possibly have webinars as well as the live presentations.
Well, definitely something that is going to be developing as the year goes on and as it becomes something that's actually sold in Missouri in the beginning of next year. I want to thank Dr. Mimi Vo and Rolla City Councilman Daniel Jones for joining us today. Thank you both very much for being here.
Thank you.
Always good to talk to you, Jonathan.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.